Hello, world. As you all know, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is available for pre-order right now on the D&D Beyond marketplace. The book got announced last week. I don't know what is time anymore. A year ago. What is time in the midst?
It's fake. It's fake.
It's fake. Oh, it's
we made
fake.
it up.
The book comes out officially in May. You can pre-order it now. So we're still talking about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and its 30 Domains of Dread. I'm Joe Starr. I will be the face you see on this camera until I find some better people to do it instead of me. And that means, of course, also the city has chosen now to put all of its loudest trucks next to my home.
It's a convention.
Home. I am joined by two people who may or may not have loud trucks. Saige Ryan. Hello, Saige. Welcome back.
Hi. No loud trucks here. Sorry to report.
Well, Emily, how's your loud truck situation? Emily,
they're about at a medium in the loud truck area. So
medium loud truck situation, very, very solid.
Medium loud truck.
So today we're discussing adapting horror for kids of all ages for D&D. I think the immediate jump we have when like there's a new Ravenloft thing or a Strahd thing or something, you know, it's like edgelords incoming, and like it's fun to be an edgelord. Saige Ryan's a huge edgelord, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe the edgiest. But I think you shouldn't discount a book like this if you're running a game for your kids, if you're running a game for, you know, a middle school D&D club, a high school D&D club. Or even people that aren't necessarily comfortable, you know, with horror, kids of all ages. So today we're going to sort of get into this really incredible article that Emily wrote for us, which is on the D&D Beyond website right now. You can check it out, Adapting D&D Horror for Kids of All Ages. And we're going to sort of explore the article, dive a little deeper, talk a little more about how you can approach this genre for wee ones, teen ones, and squeam ones. I don't know.
Little adventures.
Young people adventures. So jumping into the article, the first thing, Emily, you sort of talked about in this is the idea of communication, the importance of a session. Obviously, session zeros are important across the board for any game that you're playing, but especially, you know, playing with a younger group, a session zero is especially important.
Oh, hands down, yes. Because this, the session zero, I feel like, in horror is essentially the most crucial session, not even the finale. This will take precedent as like the most important, biggest a session with impact, because you're, as a DM, you're going to learn your guidelines and your boundaries of where you can play in. Because what you really want in this game is you really want everyone to have fun. I mean, that's just D&D in general, regardless of if it's horror, mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, really happy, just goofy, silly quest, or a quest that has so many stakes and so much like heaviness and weight. Ultimately, regardless of kind of the motion behind it, you want, the key thing there is fun. So this session zero is going to be great for you to just ask your players, hey, what are some things that we don't feel comfortable exploring here, especially in horror? And just talking through those and letting everybody at the table know that it's comfortable to talk about those things, and to then, as a DM, make a list of that. And also, especially for horror and especially for your younger players, I would also tell them like, hey, and you know what, if there's any point in the game where you don't feel comfortable, or you don't want to explore something, or maybe you forgot something was a little bit scarier than you originally imagined, feel free to just, use an X card, give me a hand, like raise your hand during the game, or just say, can we pause? Because I think, like I said, the most important thing about horror is having fun, and you want to make sure all of your players have fun, and that nobody is in this horrible kind of, I'm just gonna keep playing because nobody else is saying anything, and that's the last thing you want to do. You never want to turn anybody off from a game in your game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a session zero, specifically for, we've talked about session zeros before, and especially with people your own age and stuff like that, you know, we've come up with all these really cool tips and tool sets to communicate. Do you two have any, Saige, I'll start with you. Any sort of thoughts on how to approach a session zero? You know, I'm a dad with 3 kids. They all play. I'm making a character for myself. You know, they all play. We're going to start doing family game night for D&D. they're 10, 11, and 12 because we made the horrible mistake of just going 1, 2, 3 right out the gate. They're all going to go to college at the same time. I'm going to be really miserable. But until that time comes, we're playing a game all about Strahd. How do you approach a session 0 with kids that might not necessarily be able to say, here are the following things that make me uncomfortable?
Something I really enjoyed using, and I really enjoyed when people used with me, and it's going to depend on, like, I guess, reading level, age, but are those kind of consent form checklists? Because a lot of the time I've looked over those as an adult woman and been like, I didn't think about the fact that 100,000 snakes would make me uncomfortable, but like, I guess if we're really going to get into it, like now that you mention it, I might not love that. Like, I get anxious about like the deep ocean, for instance, the like enclosure of it. And some of those things that I would not, if someone was like, hey, what makes you uncomfortable? Most of the time I'm like, nothing. I'm nothing. And then someone puts it on a list in front of me. And I think that could be really effective for kids as well. I'm taking a moment to not give them a graphic and awful list of horrible things that could happen, but some things that are kind of like on the edge of sensitive that they might not have thought of off the top of their head. And allowing those things to also potentially be anonymous, I think is really interesting. You don't have to put your name on this sheet. It's okay. If anyone checks it off, it is not happening in the game. So they don't have to necessarily come forward and say, I'm afraid of this thing. It's hard to be afraid of things, especially as a kid and when you haven't gotten that confidence in the game yet. So I think that an anonymous, like, kind of consent checklist could be really, really nice, that they can just mark off some of the things they'd like to avoid in the horror genre.
I think that anonymity nailed it. I was worried I wouldn't get the word out. Nailed it, Star. I think it's really important for teenagers too, because there's no way in the world teenage Joe would have been like, actually, that really bothers me. I just would have been like eyeballing like the kids that I'm nervous to be around to my left and right, and just be like, are they cool? I guess I'm cool. I'm cool too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's such a good call. Emily, any other thoughts on session 0 for the children's?
I mean, I think yeah, Saige phrased it perfectly. Those consent sheets are so great, especially if you have an idea for what you kind of want to take your horror in. You don't have to list all the things that you're going to, like, you don't have to list like just the things that you're going to explore in your game. You think like mummies, pharaohs. So that way people are like, oh, okay, I think I know where this is going. But you can put other things that may pop up in there too, or perhaps thematic elements, and also situations. You can also list situations on a consent form, because there's certain situations that some players may not feel comfortable with, like, I don't want my character to be maimed in any way, or I don't want my character to be put in this situation by another character or an NPC or a villain. And so, yeah, just that anonymity and you did it, and I couldn't. You cursed us.
See an enemy.
But yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. Especially even with kids, I think anonymity, being anonymous, is really important, because yeah, sometimes your siblings can kind of, like, my little brother would sometimes give me a hard time, and I think that just being able to submit my answers in there. And knowing too that, like, if you have like another parent or another family member who's joining the family D&D night and they feel comfortable too, like, it's not just for kids, it's for everyone, to make sure everyone's having a good time.
Yeah. Two other sort of thoughts I had about session 0 with little ones is, I think that sort of that conversation, like, what about this? What about this? Is it's also a nice conversation to have beyond yes and no, because little kids might just be like, yeah, for everything. And then, maybe there's a nice follow-up conversation to have, because with smaller kids, it's, it's different than, talking to my gamer group, right?
Yeah.
My gamer group, someone's like, no on this. Like, they've been no on that for years, right? There's no need to have a conversation. Well, but would it be an interesting thing? Kids might just be like, clowns are horrible, but there might be an opportunity to be like, so absolutely, no clowns are you scared of them, but it might be fun to like be scared of them, which I think is kind of a cool conversation to be able to have with your younger ones.
And kids can be brutal in these games. I've played a few games that we've hosted, particularly because, like, I do a princess D&D show. Like, we're made to play games and introduce children and full families to D&D. We are super kid friendly, and I love that. And we've had both some times where we like volunteered to go guest in some kids' games that were just getting into Dungeons and Dragons that were hosted at a local game store. And I remember coming up in full princess garb, and one of the kids going, "She's a witch," and proceeding the session to be burning the witch.
Oh my
God. Just trying to figure out how, because I come in, I'm like, I've got all these abilities, I'm here to help. And because somebody goes, "She's a witch," and I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, it must have been one of the most intense sessions, most absolutely wild, out of the box sessions I've ever played.
New video topic: children are monsters and we should fear them.
I mean, it's important for both sides. The horror can come from you, the horror can come from the children.
Well, I think another way to approach the checklist with kids, right? Because it can be a little much to hand kids that list of, especially younger ones, just like hand them a list of things to fear and be like, yes, no. Turn it around a little bit. Ask them what they like. Do they like Scooby-Doo? Do they like Universal monsters? Are they, every kid's a little different, right? Like I have a nephew that if someone gets angry on a show, he freaks out. And then I have another nephew who's like, I've seen The Haunting several times, the original, and it doesn't faze me, and he'll be fine. But, sort of being able to reverse engineer that question of like, what are you into? You can kind of gauge their level, I think, really nicely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Scooby-Doo is a good example on that, because like then they're comfortable with so many of those things that it's like, all right.
Mm-hmm.
You like the haunted house. Yeah, you like the monster, the different kinds of monsters, traps. You never know like what could be behind the next door. That sets up for a lot. And like you said, Joe, yeah, you can always figure out too, if you have a kid who just maybe spiders aren't their forte, but they sure as heck would like to blast them with some fireballs, versus someone who's like, no clowns can't be here. I will not know. That is the no-go zone.
Yeah, I don't even want to punch one. I want them gone.
Do not describe me a clown. Do not do the voice of a clown. Do not scene paint a clown.
Don't even laugh or juggle. None of those things. Well, but sort of getting into, okay, we've done our session 0. Now let's look at Curse of Strahd. Let's look at Van Richten's guide, the 30 domains of dread. It doesn't necessarily mean discounting all of those based on the list. Emily, you talk about customization a lot in this article with like, okay, well, if they don't like this, then how can you tweak this to make it work for them? It was just some really brilliant examples, specifically the zombie example, which I thought was great. Would you mind jumping into that a little?
Yeah, so in the piece, I kind of talk about at the very beginning how, after session 0, you can look at any of these really, really cool horror scenarios, horror campaigns, horror adventures. And if you want to modify them, if you're like, well, how do I make this kid friendly? What my suggestion to you is finding the core of it. What is the core of that adventure? Mm-hmm. So for, the zombie nightmare of Kovnia. Sorry, I could not read for a second there.
Almaninity.
So the core of this adventure is essentially fighting hordes of enemies that terrorize and crave something after death. That's a zombie. Does a zombie have to crave blood or guts? Maybe not. If you have adventurers, or if you have kids at your table who are like, I don't want to think about a zombie coming after me in my sleep and munching on my toes or eating me. You can modify then, change what the zombie is hungry or craving. What if there is a potent magical source somewhere in the town, and that's what's drawing these hordes and hordes and hordes of zombies to attack? And so it's up to your party to solve kind of that mystery, find that magical source, eliminate it to stop that zombie horde from happening. And then, of course, if you have kind of like older adventurers, maybe folks who are like, I'm down with zombies. Zombies cool. We love it. Spooky. But they're kind of like, I like zombies, but not R-rated, like nasty carnage. I don't need my DM describing every gruesome detail of the NPC we started to fall in love with getting mangled in half by a horde of zombies. Mm-hmm. With that, you can just use your you kind of scene paint and use your narrative and you use your words to describe terrifying situations with these zombies, but without going into that carnage. So perhaps they're just railing on a door. They don't have to be doing anything like bloody or gruesome. Or if they do take that NPC, all of a sudden you just see them almost being yoinked into the darkness and you hear a scream. And so you don't know what happens to them, and it kind of leaves that mystery in the air. So once you know the core of the adventure that you really want to explore, from that you can kind of like, all right, can I sub this piece in here? Or can I take this and twist it a little bit and make it malleable and play better with my players that I have at my table?
Mm-hmm. No, that's fantastic. Saige, have you ever sort of like run into any times? Because again, you're my spooky horror 11 edgelord friend, and I'm going to stop saying that.
It's fine. It's a brand. I'll take it.
It's a brand. It's
it's a brand.
Brand awareness. Have you ever had to do that, like pivot and stuff? Because I love the idea of just being like, just pivot the base concept of what zombies are after, and they're still scary, but you've taken away a lot of that, like
yeah,
kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think the way that Emily described it as well, I think one of the powerful things that you said was the idea of somebody just being pulled away into the darkness, because I think that it allows, if you have even kind of an inconsistent level of players at your table and comfortability, it allows them to kind of fill it out and allow it to be scary, because that's part of the fun. That's part of the thrill of horror. And it allows them to scare themselves, but only to the amount that they are comfortable with. Everyone will hit their own place in their imagination by leaving that piece up to them. It's the thing that people do in horror movies. You don't reveal the face, and it's so much scarier that way. And you get to kind of tailor it to what scares you. But on the other hand, a little kid then isn't going to freak themselves out with the gruesome details of flesh peeling zombies. Which I think is really clever. I also have seen the other side too. Like, my niece is 8 years old, and she really, really wants to get into it. And as soon as quarantine is over, it's first game time. It's perfect timing. I'm so excited. She's real into horror. She's calling me all the time, and she's like, can I watch this yet? Can I watch this yet? Can I see this? And I have to be like, no, I'm so sorry. I've never had to say no to you before, and I hate this. So it's going to be one of those things as well too, where it's like, okay, I'm going to choose to slow roll you in horror, even though you think that you are absolutely ready for this thing. You don't know that you're also going to have nightmares. And then my sister's going to be calling me at 3 a.m. when you're still awake. So I think on the other hand too, is kind of like accounting for these things that a kid might be like, I can take it. I can hang. Yeah. I'm not afraid of that. And being like, okay, well, let's take it, dip a toe in at a time.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, because keeping that language sort of and storytelling suggestive, they're allowed to make that decision on their own.
Yeah.
And completely in their own head. Something I really like. Let's jump into this. Let's jump into sort of that language of actual gameplay, and you're actually leading the game, with your players. There's something I think so important about how you deliver the same thing for these different age groups with different intent. Emily, for example, you make this great example of ability checks. They've entered a room and you ask everyone to roll a perception check or something like that. It's all in how you play it. It's all in the details of how you play it. Everyone gives you their numbers. It's with smaller kids that are just having a good time and want to be able to laugh to break up some of this tension. That's good to know. And like playing it up. With your high school D&D group that's probably just trying to keep it cool through this. You can keep it cool with them, and just like, I see what game you guys are playing. Like, yeah, okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. I think it's just all about style and delivery and intention.
Oh, yes, agreed. And yeah, like ability checks and saves are amazing ways to build tension. They're D&D's beautiful Christmas gift to you nonstop of how to just naturally build tension in the game without you having so much as to like lift a finger with writing a narrative, or like you literally just have to be like, yeah, I need you to do a Constitution save roll right now.
Yeah.
And then immediately everyone's like, just like stomach drop, fear. I'm in a Mass Effect RPG right now, and our GM, like anytime he says, great, do this roll. Okay, He just writes it down, doesn't say anything, and I feel the sweat start to form on my body. Yeah, it's all in delivering. It's using the game to help build terror and build horror, even if you don't have like the scariest villain or a scary consequence. Like say you're playing you're doing a haunted house adventure, an adventure in a haunted house where there's like all these mysterious rooms, and you've got like your table full of kiddos. They're going to be so terrified by those ability checks, those constitution checks. What do they mean? Like you said, Saige, the mind in horror, the mind is your greatest weapon in horror. Your players' minds are your greatest gift in horror because it's going to do all the hard work for you. That's why horror films are so low budget too. It's just the mind can do it so much better than a bunch of money can. So yeah, just playing into those ideas. Like Strahd can have a super silly accent, totally. If you're playing with like, if you want to bring Strahd in for younger adventurers, or who knows? Yeah, it's just you can choose depending on your tone, can match the age range of the people you have at your table.
No, absolutely.
And as someone who sat at Emily's table and played with Emily, as soon as you were like, make a con save, I was just like, oh no. All she had to do was say it, and I was just like, oh God, okay.
That was probably a very heavy, like a morally heavy game. That was we
did. Yeah, we played.
That was The Witcher, so it was very dark.
That was definitely a dark time. I agree. I think in the language of that, one of my favorites is when you get to look at a player and go, and you reiterate their action back to them, and it's like, so you want to just open the door? And that's the moment that you're just like, I have messed up. I have done something terrifying. And they get that moment to either lean towards the horror. And if they are genuinely afraid, they can go, actually, I'd like to check for a trap first. They get that kind of 1 extra second. And it is a little bit of a cheat sheet. It does give them a little bit of this buffer. Or to go, yeah, I open the door. Yeah, I push right through it.
I kick it.
1 extra. Yeah, forget it. Eldritch blast it.
Yeah, and especially for younger kids, like that, the ability to make that decision is so big. And we should do a whole series on how ability checks are like the unsung hero, like those moments, because I ignore them all the time as a DM. I'll just, I'm just like, stealth check, cool, or whatever. I got to get to my next story thing, and we forget the like let things breathe in between those moments, like you said, Saige, like the first time Emily was like, Constitution check, please. And you kind of went, with your table full of kids, are you sure you want to open that door? That's a moment for them to have fun and break some of this tension with laughter and everything, and talking amongst themselves until ultimately, like, yes, we're going to break through that door. That's a natural way to break the scary tension. Is to let them do it themselves. I think is like the saving throws are such a gift for something like this. Letting kids make decisions is such a gift in horror D&D.
Yeah, taking back that control can a lot of the time allow horror to be fun again. If you're getting overwhelmed, situations where you are once again in control of what happens allows that to be like, okay, this is scary, but I'm okay. I'm safe. I am in control of the situation and how scary it gets.
Yeah. Roman Wolf 007 in chat. If you're on Twitch right now, send your questions our way. Mods are telling you how to do it right now, and we'll try to get to them. If you're watching on YouTube and you missed the live chat portion of this, drop your questions, drop everything in comments, and we'll make sure to chat with you. But Roman Wolf 007 says, turning horror into comedy. Thoughts? And I think that goes along with sort of what we're talking about right now. Is like, it's okay to turn horror into comedy. If you have a younger group that would rather sort of do laughy fun vampires than Anne Rice vampires, then it's your job to show them a good time with them laughy fun vampires.
I think you can do both. I don't think that a campaign has to be limited to true horror or to comedy horror. I think there are these moments where things get so intense and ridiculous that a horde of zombies running towards you and one of them tripping, or one of them, pulling back your bow and shooting an arrow, and it just being like, oh, it stuck him right in the eye, and now he's running around, freaking out. There are these moments that it can be dark and it can be horrific, but it can break this tension in a fun way that allows you to build it back up.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the piece that there's like you don't think about it when you first like think horror. You're like, oh, horror, spooky, scary. But it's not really a nonstop fright fest. Good horror is a melody. You have frightful horror moments, and then you have a break of humor, of light, of comedy, of something else. And so that way, like you said, Sage, those heavier moments hit harder. They have a harder punch. And yeah, like if you have younger adventurers who are like, I'm gonna take out. I'm gonna light this whole castle on fire. Well, let's put a firecracker on Strahd's cape and send him to the moon. Like
you hang out with the most adorable children.
That sounds exactly what D&D children. Yeah, that sounds exactly like D&D with children to me.
Like feel as a DM, especially in horror, especially with the younger kids, have the confidence to just let it go. You like it's D&D is group storytelling. As the DM, you're kind of the navigator of the story, but once everybody's in it at the table, it's no holds bar. Everybody is telling this thing equally together.
Yeah.
So yeah, like lean into that fun. If it gets goofy, let it get goofy. You can bring in those horror elements, but like also let these kids lead. I guarantee you it will bring them back to wanting to play more and more D&D in the future. If you show them that like it's not just me telling you how to roll your dice and where to put your minis. It's us telling a story together, and how cool and special is that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what? They're also maybe not processing this the same way as you are. If you're walking out and going like, well, we had a bunch of laughs and the kids had a good time, the kids are probably like, yeah, we had some good laughs. That was scary. When I had to put the firecracker on Strahd, like that was scary. We laughed and had a good time all the way through it. But just because your table didn't walk away shooketh does not mean that you have failed at your job. As far as comedy and horror go, it's kind of the same dance steps to a point. Someone once told me, like Yoda taught me about comedy, but they said comedy is subverting an audience's expectations or breaking their expectations without causing fear, pain, or anger. And horror is the same way, except it's trying to go for fear, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the dance steps are very similar. And I think, regardless of what age group you're working with, I think being able to find ways to shift that dance left or right is a great tool for a DM to have.
Absolutely.
See here. Let's see if we got any other questions. Melly, throw them my way if we've got any more. We also talked a little bit about stakes, Emily, in this article, and how to sort of set up stakes that are going to work for all ages. Because the end game, this wizard will stop reality. Might not work with 8 to 10-year-olds. So let's talk a little bit about stakes for little ones.
Totally. So I think, yeah, stakes for me as a DM are so crucial in game. And I think anybody can play with them. For like little kids, think of how you used to live life as a kid. And that's how you know how to give stakes. Like everything, like what was the biggest deal day to day? If I didn't get to sit with this person at lunch, oh my gosh, I didn't get to, like someone told me my outfit looked really good and that was amazing. Or I didn't get picked at recess. It's these things that as adults we're like, oh, that is so small. And like, young me, why did I even worry about what people thought of my clothes? No, it's like, it's so big as a kid. So for me, stakes can be especially like very materialistic, very connected to the characters themselves. So the example I gave in the article is like, all right, your druid staff has been taken in order to power Dr. Victra's brand new creature. Like it's going to be your druid staff, this precious, beautiful staff is going to be the conduit for this thing. And your party's got to work together to help your friend get their stuff back. Like to me, that is so great. Or if you have a kids group that falls in love with an NPC, there's nothing better than putting an NPC in kind harm's way, I'll say it that way, making the NPC be the thing you've got to help, because especially like everybody falls, especially like little kids, everyone falls in love with like goofy NPCs, like we want to adopt them into our party. Great, there's your stakes right there, what they love. With older players, you can definitely get into more of like, okay, what's your character's backstory? What are some wants that your characters have? How can we use these stories to play with those and tug at your heartstrings? And also, you can play with a little bit more of like moral dilemmas and stuff too. I love challenging my players with choices, as Saige knows. I give them very, very cruel trolley problem like choices. And yeah, like I say, same with a druid, but you have a druid for your teenage group. The brain of your druid's dead relative is the one that powers Dr. Victra's creation. Do you put that creature to rest or do you let them live? Like there's so many, each player will have their own thoughts about this, and the whole party will get to come together and like make a decision, and there'll be these great character moments that you build in. So I think, yeah, like I think stakes are for all ages. You just got to think about kind of like what's important to these people right now in their lives, and how does that translate into D&D?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Saige.
Yes, hi.
Any thoughts on stakes?
Absolutely. I got a lot of thoughts on stakes. I think that something that's really interesting to build off of the idea of like what kids care about is the moment that you're able to provide these kids validation in their character choices, those stakes became bigger, even past tense. So even if it was that they fought Strahd, they lit a firecracker and, toasted him. But that moment of the entire town gathering around the group of heroes to congratulate them and thank them for saving their town, somebody walking up with their family saying, thank you for keeping us safe, for protecting us, great hero, is that moment that like will amplify every bit of stakes from then on, because you get that opportunity to be like, I have to do this horrifying thing. You can have like, the child version of this trolley problem of I have to do this thing, but I'm starting to understand the greater good. I'm starting to know that I'm a hero that's servicing people, to keep the darkness at bay, right? So this horror allows them to be empowered as heroes to receive the reality of validation. That like they might not be able to process they're looking for, but I know certainly as an insecure child, somebody just being like, you're a hero and you made all of the right choices and you did a great job, I would just be like, I love this game.
I am a hero.
Let's do this every week.
Please.
Well, I think that sort of brings us to the idea. I think especially for smaller kids, maybe not high schoolers or middle schoolers, because I don't know how to talk to them. Probably for them too. It's helpful.
Hello, my fellow kids.
Hello, my fellow
kids.
With my 8 skateboards.
What do I? How do you?
I'm gonna do a Fortnite dance.
Oh, it's me, Strahd, Dab.
Okay.
Okay, I have to write down dabbing Strahd.
Okay, Boomer. But I think I don't know what you would even call this. It's not session 0. It's your post session. I don't know. But I think sort of what you're talking about, Saige, those moments of like choice and like letting them be a hero and reveling in those victories and stuff. I think, especially after running, a scary game with kids, I think at the end it's cool to have sort of a wrap-up session where you let them like really celebrate that win and celebrate all the like the crazy like, oh yeah that was scary, and just really so just in case there's any other sort of I don't know, spooky vibes left with your players that you would rather keep at the table, and don't want to scar them. Like that they have a chance to talk through that stuff. You can ask them questions, you can gauge how they're feeling.
Let them shake it off and leave it there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And in those sessions too, you can decide like if this is a group, if this is not like a one shot, say this is an adventuring party that's going to keep going on more adventures, like how much of this adventure do you want to bring into your next campaign or your next session, and using that too.
Well, we've got a couple questions, and then I think we will get out of here. Appreciate all of you watching. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, participating. We always really, really appreciate it. Hixier asks, would you recommend using pre-generated characters for kids just starting out with school groups, since most likely they probably have 30 to 40 minutes to play at school?
I would say it depends on their interest. For me, when I got into D&D, which like I wasn't a child, I was like a late teenager, but the most fun part for me still is building characters. So a lot of the time when playing with kids, we've always done that where we kind of like, all right, I'm going to have the D&D Beyond sheet open and you tell me, do you like being smart or do you like being strong? You know, and then kind of being like, okay, that sounds like this. And then using that kind of like easy builds, you know, standard array, or picking a quick build based on that. But I think giving them that little bit of customization will make them more invested in the game.
Yeah, I like that little bit of customization idea. At the same time, you don't have to bury them. You know, liking the Death Star isn't the same as having to know the schematics of the Death Star.
True.
You know, but I think figuring out, like you said, like breaking down those choices, like, do you want to be like in the front and like swinging a sword now, or do you want to be in the back, sort of like helping heal people and stuff like that? Giving those options, I think, is super great. And no matter how many options you give my niece, she'll be like, I would like to be a princess who dances. And you'll be like, okay, Bard, got it.
Bard, done.
Bard, done and a did. Reikio407 asks, and Emily, I feel like this is a question we should definitely throw this your way first. And then Saige, if you have any follow-ups, it's sort of a big one. It might take both of you.
All right.
Ideas for kids who love robots, but scary.
Scary robots. Ooh. I mean, the first thing that comes to my head is System Shock. I say with a laugh. No, but like some kind of abandoned spooky facility. Perhaps like that's, yeah, if you're gonna go sci-fi robots, if you're gonna go more D&D, perhaps it's Warforged. You have like this abandoned facility. You're tasking your party to go, either it's a fetch quest, they gotta go take an object from this facility, or someone might be trapped there and they gotta go look for him. The old caretaker who used to run the facility mysteriously disappeared. We need you to go investigate if he's still alive and kicking. And so yeah, just like abandoned like right horror right there, and have kind of these moments where you build in like a light flicker, like horror is such a slow build, so adding those on and on and on, and yeah, like these Warforged suddenly like coming to life, or these robots, if you're in a more sci-fi setting, suddenly coming to life, and you either having to fight them or outsmart them, or perhaps there's one that tries to like become friends with your party, and then it's like, oh well, do we shut down the whole facility? Do we try and save our robot pal here who's not like these ones that are trying to kill us? Why are they so evil? And finding this old man who's still gone, is he controlling them? Is it his path for world domination? I think yeah, that's the mindset in my mind that first kind of comes up, is yeah, just is this idea of exploration and kind of spooky factories. Anything that you put abandoned in front of anything and you're good for horror. And
Absolutely.
You can
Factory, Arby's,
space station,
anything.
Terrified.
Art Deco city under the ocean where there's genetically spliced beings.
Yeah.
Just
terrified already.
Just to throw them out.
Bioshock in there.
Just throw some random
idea.
examples.
I feel like when you're talking about the friendly robot, it's like, I'm not like other robots. I'm a cool robot.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't, death is not for me.
Emily,
I like
our DM
hipster
styles
for life.
come, our opposing DM styles come firmly into play when I'm like, abandoned Arby's, and you're like, abandoned Art Deco city under the sea.
Arby's.
In my mind, went straight to like Cybermen. No doubt. I definitely went to the like Doctor Who version of that, because those are, I think, very digestible, even though it is terrifying. And like, as an adult person, you can really get into the like moral dilemma of the usefulness of the human species. But as a kid, it's like, yo, robots want to take over. That's spooky. It's a good way to avoid bodily horror as well. If you need to defeat an enemy, but are not comfortable with the idea of something that is a little more human. And instead of there being any kind of blood or gore, you take an arm off and there's circuit boards and wires. And that can steer in a level of that's exciting and adventuring, and can be very dark and spooky without any bodily horror. But I like the idea of a Cybermen, this kind of like, they've become sentient, they have taken on this idea of their own. There's no longer any human behind them that can control them. Or like the movie 9, for instance, I also think is a very interesting one of these, like, they were built to be these big war machines, and now they have just kind of taken on this mission of their own, and they're just on this path that needs to be stopped. I enjoy sentience in a robot very, very much.
Famous last words.
Uh-huh.
I think that's it, you guys. Emily, Saige, thank you so much, for jumping on. chatting with us. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft isn't, I think, the only thing that this is applicable for. Candlekeep Mysteries is also available for pre-order right now. It comes out soon as well. Sort of what we were talking about with tone and atmosphere. You know, we didn't even get into like music and stuff like that, but all those little choices that will build into the atmosphere you're going for your age group. A simple music choice can just completely change a game. So yeah, Candlekeep Mysteries. I think this stuff is great for that. Obviously, the Domains of Dread in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, I think absolutely applies to that. Both of those books available for pre-order on the D&D Beyond Marketplace. Van Richten's Guide comes out May 18th. I believe Candlekeep comes out that's probably wrong. Candlekeep Mysteries also comes out soon. I don't have it directly in front of me. Emily Rose, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at frankly_Emily on Twitter. That's where I share a bunch of my articles and stuff that I'm doing. And you can also find my articles at emilyrosejacobson.com.
I appreciate you being here, including the one that she wrote that inspired this video. It's on dndbeyond.com right now. Saige, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me everywhere on the internet at Not Saige. I stream here on Twitch, mostly chatting and video game content. And if you want to find me rolling dice, I'm always at twitch.tv/Pixel Circus playing D&D most days.
Awesome. No, sounds good. Thank you again, both of you, for being here. Thank you guys for being here. And if your question in the comments or in the chat is, this all sounds great, but how do I play D&D? I don't know anybody. Go to our Discord. There are a million people, literally a million people looking for players right now. They're great people. They want you to come play with them. And you're worth that chance, that sort of take a chance moment to go meet some folks and play some D&D. D&D is for you. It's for everybody. Thank you, guys. We'll see you later this week. Bye.